Good morning. It's great to have this chance to speak to you about women's economic empowerment worldwide, as it's a topic that concerns me both professionally and personally. First, I'll give you a brief overview of women's economic empowerment around the globe. Second, I'll talk about the significant advances we've seen in the past 3 decades, and also look at the challenges that remain. Finally, I'll point out where good policy and firm commitment can foster women's economic empowerment worldwide. Let's start with what we mean by women's economic empowerment. When I teach the gender unit of my Global Development Policy course, I use this definition of female empowerment. Female empowerment is when women and girls acquire the power to act freely, exercise their rights, and fulfill their potential as full and equal members of society. As you can see from the map, gender equality is distributed unequally in the world, with the red areas of South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa being particularly problematic for female empowerment. This does not mean that the blue areas of the map are free of any problems for women, just that those countries scored better on the index, the Gender Development Index used in this map, which is a United Nations index based on a combined measure of life expectancy, education, and wages, broken down by gender. Health indicators for women have improved globally, but maternal death and adolescent fertility rates remain high in some countries, particularly in Sub-Saharan Africa. High adolescent fertility rates prevent girls from going to school, thus increasing gender gaps in education and keeping them in either low-skill jobs or no jobs at all. Extreme education disparities at the expense of girls are not so common these days in large countries, except in Nigeria and Pakistan. And many countries have disparities at the expense of boys in secondary school, which balance out those disparities at the expense of girls in other countries. So overall, the world is at parity in education, and there are actually more women than men in tertiary education. While empowerment often comes from within, and individuals empower themselves, cultures, societies, and institutions create conditions that facilitate or undermine the possibilities for female empowerment. This definition easily applies to women's economic empowerments. Simply narrow the focus to women's economic activity and to the cultural attitudes and social and institutional constraints in which women and girls participate in work. Women act in the economy in 3 main ways: paid employment, either in the formal or the informal labor market; unpaid employment in a family firm or a family farm; or in unpaid care work, taking care of children or elders or housework. According to the World Development Report 2012, Gender and Equity and Development, which I'll call the WDR, women's labor force participation has increased significantly over the past 30 years, but unevenly. The WDR stated that the female labor force participation rate globally was more than 40% in 2008, but that rate varied from a low of 26% in the Middle East and North Africa to a high of 64% in East Asia and the Pacific, followed closely by 61% in Sub-Saharan Africa. The World Bank estimated that the global female labor force participation rate rose to 48.7% in 2017. So that's definitely progress. But just participating in the labor market, just having more women working, is not equality. As President Ryan mentioned, women's jobs are less well paid than men's, and women work far more frequently in the informal sector and in agriculture or in pink-collar segmented sectors, while shouldering much more of unpaid care work. The World Economic Forum in 2016 found that on average, women's earnings are just about half of men's. And let us not think that this is just a developing country problem. In 2017, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development found that the full-time earnings gap was 26% for highly educated workers and 22% for less educated workers in the well-off countries. The International Monetary Fund reports that many countries have made progress in closing the earnings gap, and in some places that might surprise you. In Liberia, in sub-Saharan Africa, a region where many people automatically assume the worst, the ratio of female to male earnings approaches 1, parity, equality between men and women. And in 5 other African countries, Benin, Botswana, Mozambique, Namibia, and Rwanda, along with Laos, Nicaragua, Slovenia, and Vietnam, that ratio stands above 0.8. That means in those countries, women are earning more than 80% of what men earn. A major reason that women's earnings lag men's is that women are disproportionately employed in the informal sector and in low-paying sectors of the economy. Women are more likely to work in agriculture and in services, while they are underrepresented in manufacturing and construction. And manufacturing and construction are better paid sectors. Women have smaller farms than men, and female entrepreneurial firms are smaller, more likely to be home-based, and have much less access to credit. 1 billion women do not have a banking account, making it very difficult to start a micro business. Additionally, women have less time than men for paid employment because they do the majority of housework and unpaid care of children and elderly, while men spend more time on market activities. The WDR has a striking graphic which shows how similar the time allocation of women and men are in countries as diverse as Pakistan, Cambodia, South Africa, Bulgaria, Sweden, and Italy. The amount of time women spend on housework is almost identical across these 6 countries, and is, need I say, far greater than that of men. And it's only a little different regarding childcare, with more in Pakistan and Cambodia. Okay, so what can we do about improving women's economic empowerment? Quite a lot. We can invest in education. Education correlates with female labor force participation. Conditional cash transfers can spur girls to attend school, and have done so in Turkey, Nigeria, and Pakistan. Health, we can invest in that. By doing so, in 2014, almost 100% of Rwandan women got prenatal care. Financial inclusion, extending banking services to women so that women can save and start micro businesses. We can provide affordable, high-quality child and elder care services so that women can participate in market activities. We can provide paternity leave as well as maternity leave so that both parents can bond with their child without jeopardizing their employment. We can provide flexible working arrangements so that parents can work part-time or take leave as needed to take care of children and elderly or disabled family members. We can improve legal codes where needed, such as dual land titling so both women and men are listed on property documents. In 18 countries, husbands can prevent their wives from working. 59 countries lack laws against sexual harassment in the workplace. These can be changed. We can introduce gender-responsive budgeting by governments. Korea requires that the government examines the gender impact of the budget and whether women and men are equally receiving benefits from the budget. These policies will help us achieve Sustainable Development Goal number 5, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls, which all UN members pledged to do by 2030. To sum up, we define women's economic empowerment. We looked at where women have progressed in health and education, in labor force participation, and where progress is still needed to close the wage gap, to further improve women's education and health so they can obtain better jobs, and to reduce the burden of unpaid care so that women have more time for market activities. Women's market activities can include networking and forming partnerships like the Presidential Precinct and leadership development opportunities like the Global Development Forum. Thank you.